Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. One of our favorite things to do here on the show is to introduce you to new and unique areas of medicine. Today, we're talking all about wilderness medicine, what it means to practice medicine out of hospital and in the backcountry where you don't have access to your typical resources, testing, labs, and other tools and equipment. My guest, Tara Cross, is an orthopedic PA turned wilderness medicine instructor. She's going to give us some tips on what to do if we come across an emergency outside of the walls of our clinic or hospital and how we can be more prepared in terms of wilderness medicine. Without further ado, here she is, Tara Cross. Tara, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would love it if you could take a minute to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a PA, I'm a physician assistant or associate. And I've been doing that for about 10 years now. Have worked in emergency medicine, urgent care, and most recently in orthopedics, working at like an outpatient injury clinic. So that's my day job. I've had a lot of prior experience and kind of a different life before I went to PA school. And that was based in outdoor adventure and wilderness medicine. So I've tried to keep that as a mainstay in my life and my career. It's definitely guided me to even becoming a PA and continues to provide a really great outlet and opportunity for me to, be creative and just expand and teach outside of my regular kind of day job.
So were you doing this wilderness medicine, like search and rescue as an EMT? Is that something you were doing before you went to PA school?
So I was, I actually first got trained as a wilderness EMT in 2004 and took my training through a company called Wilderness Medical Associates, and I just really loved everything about it. I had been working at some remote camps and environmental schools and doing some trip guiding for like rock climbing, canoeing, things like that, and just needed to get more medical training. So I found this program and I just absolutely loved it, and sort of just kind of pointed me in the right direction of medicine. I had actually my undergrad degrees in forestry, so I did a lot of outdoor stuff, but really kind of always enjoyed learning CPR, first aid, all the basics. And just over the years of teaching, meeting other medical professionals, other PAs, which was something I didn't even really totally know existed when I was in college, it really kind of set my career pathway towards, going to PA school.
That is so cool. So tell us more about what wilderness medicine is. I feel like we probably have a general walking around knowledge about we'd know it if we see it. But what's like the true definition of wilderness medicine? What does this entail?
Yeah, so it entails practicing medicine in remote and austere environments where their environments are very resource limited. We would have delayed access to definitive care for the patients, even sometimes a hostile environment related to weather, terrain, natural disasters, even potentially people. and sort of how we look at the care of the patient, the scene, the evacuation differently when we're in these resource limited environments.
It's so timely that we're talking about this today because last weekend I was hiking with my family on like a very well populated trail. And I was thinking, what if something happened? Like I am not that prepared, both in terms of the logistics of how to resuscitate someone else, one a member of my party, and also supplies in terms of like what I had with me that could have served as a resource in that. So tell us a little bit about like what is something you wish everyone knew, every provider knew about wilderness medicine, or even just being in a situation where you're like on the sidelines of a soccer game and you don't necessarily have your normal resources.
Yeah, well, I think some of the tools that we learn early on in our practice of physical exam, taking vital signs, we really have to focus back in on the basics. As practitioners, we get used to relying on the CT scans and lab work and ultrasounds and, all these advanced things that we have. But really, if you can look at the mechanism of illness or injury, the physical exam findings of the patient, and trend their vital signs, you can get a whole lot of information about, the severity. Is this patient truly sick? Is this a serious problem or not a serious problem? And that's something we talk a lot about in wilderness medicine is really, going through a good patient assessment, which is something admittedly, in the front country, we kind of get used to doing our, basic knee exam or something. But when we're in a more delayed access remote environment, relying on those good physical exam skills, history taking is really important.
So this is a very self-serving question, which I occasionally ask just because I'm curious, like, what should I have in my backpack as I'm hiking with like both young kids, but also potentially just being the most knowledgeable person who happens upon someone who's had an injury or is having an illness out in the wilderness?
Yeah. And we get this question a lot in classes. And, there's definitely some basics that are important to have along for your own protection, like things like gloves, because it's pretty hard to improvise a good pair of medical gloves that can protect you from the patient and vice versa. I usually recommend that people have some sort of pocket mask to be able to give rescue breaths or do CPR. Some people actually just recently taught a class for an Appalachian Trail crew who, their goal is to like carry as minimal as possible, but you can get little plastic shields that can be a good barrier layer to protect you. It's amazing, there's a lot of things that you just would have in your pack, like maybe an extra layer, a raincoat, a t-shirt, things like that you could use to actually like put direct pressure on something that's bleeding, have a shelter layer for a patient who maybe is suffering from some cold or they're having like a volume shock issue, so you need to try to warm them up. So even just those little kind of space blanket things can be helpful. But, in general, you want some things that can manage wounds, can control bleeding, and can also help kind of protect you from other people's body fluids, basically. A lot of things we can improvise. So, using a backpack, or other items that you would have in your pack to like build a splint, or things like that there's a lot that can be improvised. Some people do carry like foldable splints and like elastic bandages and things like that. And those things can absolutely be very helpful. We usually delineate kind of what we're bringing based on how long we're going out, where we're going, what the activity is, and then the people that are with us. So, if we're with experienced individuals, maybe, hey, everyone's kind of in charge of bringing somewhat of their own medical supplies. If it's more you're with your family, your kids, obviously you're gonna be the one bringing that stuff. So some things that can help with those types of injuries. We also like to think about what are the most common things that could happen in certain environments. So hiking, we think a lot about blisters, maybe some cuts and scrapes. Kayaking or canoeing, again, blisters, maybe some skin issues from skin being wet for a long period of time, things like that. Twisted ankles, walking on rocks. So, yeah.
Confidence is so important in life, at work, and in business. And there is one thing I did years ago that skyrocketed my confidence. Feeling good makes such a difference in the way that we show up in the world. The confidence booster, one of the biggest ones ever, was a virtual color consult with Created Colorful. You sign up, tell them about yourself in a quick questionnaire, and then you take photos of yourself. No makeup, with natural lighting and various colors of fabric draped across your chest. Send in all those photos and one of the virtual color specialists reviews them. They send you an email with details on your season, your ideal colors, and knockout colors that are unique to you. Let me tell you, when I sit down behind this podcast microphone to record a video and I'm wearing a top in one of my knockout colors, I feel like an entirely different person. Add in some lipstick in my color palette and it's the chef's kiss of confidence and self-care. Use the discount code Tracy or the link in the show notes for $20 off any consult, gift consult, or bundle. And get ready to boost your confidence and simplify your wardrobe. So what are some tips that you could gift for us? Like, hey, we're in this situation and we come across something that we feel generally unprepared to handle, which is me imagining me coming across any situation outside of the walls of a clinic or hospital. Like, what are some tips for like, how do I navigate this like calmly, safely, reasonably when you have this medical background, but you're out of your element?
Right. The biggest thing is to kind of focus initially on making sure the scene is safe so that you aren't getting yourself into a situation that you could become also a victim. So looking around, making sure the scene is safe, kind of taking your time, kind of entering the situation, which I know can be kind of challenging to sort of mentally like make yourself sort of step back. But even just taking a moment or two to sort of take a deep breath, look around, make sure that whatever happened to the person is not going to happen to you. And then really it's just make sure they're breathing, make sure they have a pulse. There's no significant severe bleeding going on. We look initially for critical life threats, so anything that could cause death within moments. And most of the time, those things are stable. And if someone's awake talking to you, their mental status is at least okay. They have a pulse, they're breathing. So we look at those kind of important things first in anything that could be a critical life threat. And then really you have time, sit down, take a breath, get your supplies out, have your patient kind of be in a comfortable position for them, and just sort of try to be a little bit more, and really honestly at that point, that's when it's like, oh, okay, this is what I do in the office most days, is you ask sample history questions. You ask about allergies and medications and, what their chief complaint is. Someone takes vital signs for you, but, we should have a way to take a pulse and a respiration rate. There's a lot we can tell about what's going on internally for a patient and just monitoring their vital signs. And then, doing an appropriate physical exam for whatever the situation is.
Now, do you call 911 when you're in the wilderness and you have someone like?
Yeah, you can. I mean, if you find something that is life-threatening, I definitely would at least attempt to call 911. There's nowadays fairly good reception in most places, but there's still going to be areas that you wouldn't really be able to get a great cell signal. Sometimes text messages can go through better than a phone call, although not all states are set up for text messaging 911 systems yet, but it's coming as I hear. So yes, definitely. If you find a critical life threat, you definitely want to activate that emergency response system sooner than later. That activation obviously can look a lot different in a wilderness environment than in the front country where you just call 911 and they're like, oh, this is the address and we'll be there in 5 minutes. So some of the logistics of that can get challenging. Ultimately, usually some sort of like ranger, national park, forest search and rescue team would get like involved with that fire department. So you wouldn't be like coordinating the evacuation so much, but being able to let them know what's going on and how serious or not serious the situation is can be really helpful in their response, and also being sure that we're not putting the rescuers at undue risk, for whatever's happening out there.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have found both an aptitude and a passion for this in the last 20 years. So tell us more about what you do in terms of serving people and educating them about wilderness medicine.
Yeah, so I am a licensed training company of a company called Wilderness Medical Associates, and I work under my company called Blue Mountain Medic, which was formed in 2020. And so I spend a good part of my time off from work teaching wilderness medicine classes of all levels. So I teach everything from a first aid level, which is like a 2-day training for lay people learning CPR and basic first aid with the wilderness components to it, all the way through wilderness emergency medical services, which is like a wilderness EMT program that's appropriate for like paramedics, EMTs. And we also do a few advanced life support courses, which are for like the advanced practitioners. PAs would be obviously an example, but the course is open to anybody that's like paramedic level and above. So a lot of the clientele that I work with are people that are working for organizations, camps that, take kids or adults on, adventure education trips, canoeing, kayaking, leadership. One of the schools I work with, it's like a high school, but they have a really strong adventure education program. So I instruct their teachers that are taking the students out on these trips so that they have like the medical training and background understanding of what to do in an emergency.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like providers would be particularly well poised to just be a potential asset in this situation. Like, although I haven't been trained in wilderness medicine, between me and someone who's just hiking who has no medical background, at least, I have something to fall back on in terms of critical thinking, in terms of understanding disease processes, or just like knowing if someone is stable or not, in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it can be surprising when we're out of our element, sometimes how our brains don't function as well as we've thought. And I mean, it's happened to me before too, in situations. And why I think that, practitioners of all levels, training in wellness medicine helps you learn and just be okay with thinking about things a little bit differently than you do in the front country where you have all the resources available, and just helps you to develop that kind of risk benefit. Is this really serious or not? Do we have to kind of, evacuate urgently, or can this be like a slower, like, let's hike out slowly, we'll get to the car and then drive to urgent care or whatever. And I think that's something that is PAs, we have that medical knowledge of being like, yes, this is important, and this is a serious problem. It can be very tricky though when we're in those elements where we don't have, the X-ray, the labs, the other support of people in our hospital environment or clinic environment or whatever, and we're by ourselves essentially. That can definitely be nerve-wracking.
Sure. Yeah. It's helpful to have other hands. And I'm also thinking like so much of the information that I get now when I see patients is visual. I'm a very visual learner in terms of like looking at vitals. And I think I would struggle even in that situation, like especially with adrenaline, but that it's auditory. Like say I'm like, I don't have a pen and paper. I'm not writing these things down. And so me just like knowing the blood pressure, like knowing the pulse is not the same as when I have it written down or in a chart. So I feel like that's something that I would struggle with in that situation.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, I would definitely encourage documentation because of what you're saying. Like, you're not going to remember, like, the pulse was 90 and now it's 110 and then it's 120. And I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, you may remember that because that's kind of an important thing, but it's just hard to remember all the things that are going on. So, having a way to record something is important. A piece of paper and a pencil, typing stuff up on your phone if you have battery life. In wellness medicine, we say we like things that have multi-uses and don't require batteries because, there's all these fun gadgets out there for things, and some of them are very great and appropriate, but you also have to think about their limitations in terms of battery life and service, like signal service. Sometimes things require, and just how functional it really is in a backcountry situation.
Yeah, when not plugged into Wi-Fi or, sure. Yeah, you're not using MD Calc to evaluate your risk of, there's just limited resources. So as I'm thinking of this, I'm wondering to the listener who is thinking, what's my liability as someone who is certified licensed to practice medicine, the Good Samaritan law, like how does this apply to things that happen off the beaten path?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky question. And I would say a lot of that kind of depends sort of where you are. There are variations in what the Good Samaritan law is state to state. So that's something that you should look into. I know certain states have rules about if you're a medical provider, like you have to render care. Other states don't have those requirements. So I would encourage people to just look that up in like kind of where they're practicing. Ultimately, I'm not an attorney, but we just kind of even in front country medicine, staying within your scope of practice, operating within the best interest of the patient. If you initiate care for someone, you got to stay with them and you got to be able to pass their care off to someone of equal or higher training. So there are some things like that you do need to be careful about, that especially if you're coming upon like a stranger out there that needs help, what the ramifications could be. But again, in general, if we stay within our scope of practice, don't abandon the patient and act in the best interest of their care and the rescue effort. It'd be pretty hard to get, in a lot of trouble.
PAs, you're dedicated to improving the lives and health of your patients for a brighter future. But what about your future? Who's dedicated to helping you with your financial health so that you can live the future you dream of? Meet Caleb Pepperday, certified financial planner and owner of Advanced Practice Planning. Caleb is the husband of a PAC himself and has seen firsthand the challenges PAs face when it comes to finances. This fueled his mission to ensure that physician assistants get the respect, guidance, and treatment they deserve to build the future they want. Don't risk facing retirement with too little in your accounts or giving up on your dreams for the future, and work with an advisor who understands the unique challenges of being a PA. Gain insights into what your retirement could look like with access to the proper guidance. As a listener of and a featured guest on this podcast, Caleb's made available a free guide to help you prepare for retirement. Check out the link in the show notes to get your free guide and learn more about how advanced practice planning can help secure your financial future. Yeah, I have often had that experience where I've never gotten it, knock on wood, I probably will soon, but I've never gotten in a situation where I've come across something while I'm solo with my kids. And I have thought about like, what would I do if I came across a car accident, but like I have my toddler in the car? Like, what is my responsibility as a Samaritan to this person who obviously needs care versus making sure that my primary responsibility at that time, parenting my kid, that my kid is safe and cared for, and that we're not in a place on the side of the road where something, terrible is going to happen because of stopping. So that's something that I think just like being mindful of, hey, is everyone in my party safe and competent and capable of taking care of themselves while I address this,
And that's the number one thing is your safety, your kids or your family or people that you're with. That's something that is like ingrained into EMS providers' heads. Like you have to evaluate that scene safety. And especially if it's a Good Samaritan situation where you're choosing to stop to help because of an accident, if it's something where you don't feel safe and that doesn't feel like a safe thing to do, at least call 911, but maybe stopping in that area of the highway or the road or whatever isn't safe. I've definitely talked about these kind of things with students too, because, you're out hiking on a trail and, especially some females who talk about hiking by themselves and they kind of understand like the risks that they're taking, but wish there weren't any, and just how they might not be as willing to stop and help someone when they're by themselves, because they didn't feel like it was a safe situation. I always say, like, use your gut instinct. If you don't feel safe, it's okay. Just, again, maybe like try to get the person help. Call 911, flag down a ranger or whatever the situation is. But our personal safety is definitely important.
Yeah. It's so timely because I just did my BLS recertification. And as a part of that emergency response system, they do in hospital, they do out of hospital. And out of hospital, you walk up, you do the skills and you're like, the scene is safe, right? Everyone is saying the scene is safe. The scene is safe. Are you okay? Are you okay? Going through like these steps of BLS. But do you feel safe? Like, are you in a situation where you don't feel like, oh, I come across a stab victim, like, well, who stabbed them and where is that person? Like really being aware of your surroundings and even just like trusting your own intuition. Like as you were saying, you're hiking alone, maybe you're female, maybe you're in an area you're not familiar with. Like if your spidey sense is tingling, as you were saying that, I was like getting a little bit of goosebumps, like just thinking about, you have to be on alert. You have to be aware of your own surroundings. And if something happened to someone, can you identify what happened? Can you make sure that that is safe before you engage or before you proceed? For sure. So I love on this show to be able to highlight people who have taken a non-traditional path. And certainly, hey, I'm going to raise my hand to be an entrepreneur and train other people about this thing that I love is not the traditional, I work in medicine and I see patients in the office or I go to the hospital to work. Tell us how that journey has been for you. Are you enjoying it? Is it a roller coaster? How's it going?
It's pretty great. It's definitely a roller coaster. My spring season is usually really busy. It's a juggle for me to like kind of take the time off of work without taking too much time off of work, to be able to do the classes. I actually have my last class for the spring season coming up starting this weekend. It's a week-long course and I'm very much looking forward to the class, but I'm also looking forward to a couple months of little downtime. So it's been a learning curve. I mean, I am not someone that has been like business minded or even, I hated all the business classes in school I had to take and stuff. I was always like, that's not what I'm going to do, but here I am. So, fortunately I've had a lot of support from my family. I've sort of realized that a lot of my relatives, we've all kind of ended up in some sort of entrepreneurial role. And I think it's part of me being able to be creative, and fulfilling areas of my life other than, just having a 9-to-5 job kind of situation. So I love it. It's definitely exhausting. There's systems and processes that I've had to kind of learn and relearn and redo, to try to make things, easier for myself. And sometimes it's tough because you kind of feel like you're a little bit always on. Like, I think I'm going to have like, all right, everything's under control right now. And then like the next day I get an email about something that's happening, or that someone wants a course like last minute. And I like really want to make that happen for them. So sometimes I admittedly probably have some trouble with some of those boundaries that I'm trying to figure out still.
I definitely personally struggle a lot more with building boundaries around business and content creation than I do around work. Like, I think I've gotten to a place with work where I don't bring work home, but I run my business from home. So then I'm home early in the morning, late at night, checking email, doing these things where it's stuff I like. It's things I enjoy. I want to be available. I want to answer questions, but how do I create a container so that it doesn't bleed over into every moment of every day?
Yes, that is a learning curve for me, that I am on the steep upcline right now, or incline.
Yeah, I want to highlight something that you've mentioned a couple of times, and the fact that this entrepreneurial journey and pursuing this has turned on different parts of your brain, and that there's something so valuable about having multi-passionate things and being a multifaceted individual who practices clinically and pursues hobbies and runs a business and shows up well for their family, and that we are so much more than that one dimension, which is a huge part of ourselves, of what we do when we practice medicine. But that is such a great way to keep us engaged and to, like, I think critically just as much in entrepreneurship as I do as a clinician.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So tell us where we can find you. If people are like, I want to take a wilderness medicine course, do they travel to you? Where are you located, and where can they find more about your services?
Yeah, so I do a little of both. Some times I will host courses kind of locally. I'm in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, but I travel all over, have gone to like Costa Rica and things like that for classes. So I am on Instagram, Blue Mountain Medic. You can email me at bluemountainmedic@gmail.com. If you want to find out more about the courses that I teach specifically, I basically operate through the Wilderness Medical Associates website, which is www.wildmed.com. So you can find more info about like the specific courses and what they cover. But if you're interested in a particular course, or finding out about like offerings, things like that, you can always email me.
Awesome. I am definitely feeling compelled as someone who would identify as like a novice hobby hiker, that just as my kids get older and we do more, that I would like to be more prepared for the hopeful event that won't happen, but sort of knowing the more time you spend in the wilderness, the more likely you are to encounter one of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tara, for coming on the show and sharing all about this with us.
It was a great experience. Thanks for having me.
I love any episode that pulls back the curtains on someone that you see building a business, doing a thing, or practicing in an area of medicine that is downright intriguing to you, and where they tell you what it's actually like, what you need in order to do that, and what it feels like to be them. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. That's all for today. But before I go, if you liked this episode, if it resonated with you, head to your favorite podcast platform, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, send it to a friend who's interested in something that we talked about today. Is essential for a show this size to reach more listeners. Thank you for your dedicated listening, and thank you for helping us to grow. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.